Now moving on to Gary O'Sullivan, who is our next speaker. He is Head of Strategy, Business Transformation at Pathfinder. Quite often strategies and visions can be in the heads of our leaders or in the heads of some of the people who are trying to influence up, and how do we actually move concepts and visions into actually real life. That's what Gary specialises in. He works with organisations and has been doing for over 20 years, creating market-leading strategies with client teams, but ultimately mobilising them that they'll bring about the change required to develop and win market share, improve delivery, and then ultimately increase our margins. He's going to talk to us about strategy and action and how to get it out of the boardroom and into our contact centres. So if you could please welcome Gary O'Sullivan of Pathfinder.
Thank you very much. Before we start, I'm determined to win that voucher, so say cheese. I'll post that in a minute. I'll share it with whoever was smiling the most there. I suppose I had thought about this, whether it should be contact centre focused or whether we should try and widen it a little bit, and I want to try and play on the words a little bit about the centre. One of the things that we talk to people about all the time is getting things out of the leadership team, you know, whether that be the CX teams or functional heads and so on, or even team leaders within teams, and getting them into the centre of action, into the centre of what people are about and what they're doing every day. So our presentation today, or my presentation today, is largely about getting it out of the boardroom and out of those heads and into the centre of everything that people do. And it's one of the most important pieces of strategy. So if we click on here, I'm going to start with a statistic. I don't like them much myself, but let's get into it. So this one was pulled from a McKinsey survey a couple of years back, and it talks about that 60% of executives in effective companies say that their companies are extremely effective at translating corporate strategies into action. Now, it seems a bit obvious to me if you look at that, right? Because, of course, people who think they're effective are going to have effective ways of implementing strategy. There's a hidden message in this that's much more important and didn't come out, right? And it's the other 6% about why they feel the way that they do, okay? Now, if you look at it and you think about it a little bit, which is more important? To have a very, very strong strategy, build up this fantastic big picture of a strong strategy, and then have a very weak mobilization of it? Or to have, you know, maybe a weak enough strategy or not a great strategy, but a very strong mobilization of it? And this is the question that I would ask you to answer. The mobilization piece is much, much more important than what it is that you set out in the first place to do, because it builds, the mobilization builds it. So if you look at some of our experience, and this is another statistic, but we've made it up, right? 60% of the rest of the people in organizations, they can often be heard saying, this has nothing to do with me, right? I don't understand it. I'm not even sure if we have a strategy, or worst of all, who cares? So, I mean, how many people in this room have heard that? How many people are actually right now saying that inside their heads about their own strategy? And this is the problem. This is the piece that we need to deal with, not the what is the vision and what's the mission and the values and all that. This is the issue. How do we get people connected to what it is we're trying to do? So I'm going to talk about a few things today. This is what I'm going to cover off. I've burned 1 minute, so the next 24 minutes I'm going to talk to you about what's the problem with strategy. Why is it an issue in the first place? Why is that an issue, right? Because some people may not think it is. What you can actually do about it, right? And what will happen if you do. Okay? So let's move forward. First thing is I want to talk about the benefit. By doing strategy a different way, what do you get? Okay? The first thing that I believe that you get, and the most important thing, is you get a massive jump in your people's engagement. And again, we have all these surveys that go around. There's lots of organizations running them, and the score is here 1 minute and it's up here the next minute and so on. We're bouncing around the place all the time. And we're always trying to get that statistic up for our executives so we can tick those boxes, right? But the most important thing here, again, is that the people are engaged and that they feel engaged, right? So this is the first thing you get if you do strategy a different way. You get everybody involved and everybody engaged. The next thing you do is you get way closer to your customers, because ultimately strategy is about being close to your customers' future and the future that they've planned for themselves. And if you want a future, get tied to their future, and all of a sudden your strategy is going to start to play out as well. And ultimately, what will that deliver? It'll deliver increases in revenue and margin pool, which is ultimately what your shareholders want. Okay? So look, what's the problem with strategy? Well, quite often, it's sitting in the CEO's head, rattling around, right? It doesn't come out. You know, I'm the CEO, I don't need to communicate, I just need to be the CEO, I just need to walk around and have this in my head. Or some other times, maybe we decide that after a period of time we need to get it out, and it turns up as a lot of numbers on a spreadsheet. And that might be fine for finance, and they can see their forecasts and their projections, and we can see the 5-year plan, and if the revenue's going this way, and the margin's going that way, and market share, this, that, and the other thing, right? But ultimately, none of this is appealing to the people. And then, even worse again, we go through a process, right? We get a bunch of consultants in, we do all the strategizing, we build up a deck, we have this lovely deck that has mission and values and all that kind of stuff. And we put it in a frame out in reception, right? And then it just gathers dust. And we go back to what we were doing before. Now, not every strategy is like this, right? But a lot of them are. That would be our experience. I don't know, do you guys feel that? Do you see it? So, what's the impact of this? Again, you'll see a theme. None of this will mobilize people around a common purpose. And at the end of the day, the reason we get up in the morning to come into work, and the reason that we are supposed to be enthusiastic about what we do, and the reason that we get motivated is about having a shared understanding and a shared purpose, a common purpose that we can all gather around and actually go after. So if you do those strategy and those visioning and all that the other way, you don't build that, nor do you build commitment to anything. Okay? You can't build the commitment that's required to deliver and deal with the hard times when they come. Okay? You're left standing holding the baby on your own going, where's everybody else? Right? Where's everybody else when the tough times are there? And most importantly, it doesn't make it clear in the role that I have in delivering the strategy. And this is a really important piece. This is not relevant for me. I don't understand it. You're not communicating. We need more communication. I mean, how many times have we heard that, right? We need more communication. You don't need more communication. You need people to be engaged and involved in it. So, why is all of this a problem in the first place? Let's move on. I've got an analogy here. I was trying to think some up, but this is the best I could come up with. A party in Galway at the weekend. It's a good place for parties, right? So we got 3 people, right? Let's call it Mary there as head of operations, and the first one, right? John is the next role, and John is taking care of the finances and the training and the development and various other things. And Michael at the bottom there, he's the sales guy, right? Sales and marketing. So they're all heading to Galway. They start out in the same place. They're all heading roughly west. Okay, so we're in good shape so far. We get on with it. Somebody chooses to take a horse, right? So that's my vehicle of choice, right? Somebody else takes the train, and somebody else takes the private jet. Okay, no pun now for sales and marketing in that one, right? But so apologies to anybody who's involved in sales here. So slow going on the horse, as you can imagine, right? We're making quick progress here on the train, and we're going in a straight line, and we're going exactly where we want to go. And we're making super fast progress in terms of the sales and how we're selling things and how we're developing new markets and all of that kind of stuff. Problem. The horse ends up in the Ballinasloe Horse Fair. Wrong party. Right county, but wrong party. Okay? Unfortunately, the training and the HR guys and all this fell asleep and missed the stop, right, and got off in Westport. And the other guys, the sales guys, they overshot and went straight to New York. Right? I'm not sure which ended up in the best place, but ultimately, everyone ended up in different places, doing their own thing, right, and everyone missed the party. And why should we be surprised, right? Because we started in the right place, but we really didn't nail down what it is and how we were going to mobilize towards there. You know, and if you look at, I thought of some analogies yesterday, and I won't use them today, about wars and things like that, about how people mobilize these things, go into battle, and you send the troops to the wrong place, or send the Air Force out there, they'll sort that out. At the end of the day, you know, you've got to listen to feedback, you've got to work this thing through, you've got to try something, try it again, and keep refining it. That's what mobilizing a strategy is about. Okay? So if we move on for a second, we talk about what we need to do about that. The first thing you can do about this problem, right, is you can start by redefining it. And one of the things that we say to people when we meet them first is that, what is strategy? If I had €1 for every time somebody says what is strategy, or for that matter, for every definition I've ever heard of it, right? We have another view, so maybe I give you €1, right? But it's a statement of intent, right? So someone stands up and says, I am going to do this. Hell or high water, that's what I'm going to do, right? It's a statement of intent about the future. In this time, I will be here. I will be doing this, right? So in that moment, I'm expressing my commitment. It's an individual commitment, right? And it's both professional and it's personal. And you cannot separate the two. There's a notion that we can come to work and we can leave our real world outside, or our life behind us. We walk through the door, we adopt this personality that's defined by our role or what we're supposed to be, right? And then we separate this thing from the professional, from the personal. You can't do it. It's not possible, because one impacts the other. They both impact each other. They're interconnected. So if I make a promise or if I make a commitment about my intent about where I'm going to be, I'm putting everything on the line for that. My personal life, my personal ambitions, my professional ambitions, and everything. So you've got to recognize that. And when you're approaching this, and you're approaching this with your teams, and when you're senior teams, and you guys are approaching it with all of the people around you, this is where you need to start. The other thing is that it's about a new future. If it's about an incremental shift in what you're doing today, believe me, that's not going to set anybody's world on fire. It's going to be more of the same, okay? So it's about a new future for the organization, for the team, because people love being part of teams, and for the person in that team. Most importantly, for the person in that team. Where will I end up if I do all of these things? Will I be better off or worse off? How is this relevant for me? Again, crucially important. Now wrap this all up in imagine I have a nice statement, it's in the frame in reception. How is that relevant? How do I even connect with this statement if I can't see myself in it? So a very, very important part about where to start. Second thing is involve as many of the team as you can. Absolutely, as many. Don't go into a corner, 3 of you, write up something, come back and go, here it is. Ta-da. And then, look, we've communicated it to you. Thou art now communicated to. And expect everybody to walk out and be, hurrah, hurrah. Go into the bar later, you'll hear the real story. What was that all about? Another load of rubbish. Okay? So these are the things you've got to watch out for. And if you truly want to put yourselves, your organization, your teams, and all that into a different place, you've got to take this stuff seriously. So it's a mobilization. This is the other thing about this, is that people create strategy. People in organizations create strategy, not senior management, right? And definitely not consultants. I have unsold more strategy work than I've ever sold by saying one line at the start, I'm not doing the work, you are. You're the ones that need to do the strategy, not me. Right? And even recently, we got a formal piece of feedback, and I'm going to frame it, actually, in the office. And it was from an organization who came back with a score, and we got 0 for the section. We lost the work to a competitor. God bless them. And it said, you think this is realistic to ask a senior team to have the time and the capacity to do the strategy? I was amazed. I was going, my God almighty. I'd be scared even if somebody outside the organization saw who that was. So we're happy we're not doing that work. So without individual commitment, an organization strategy remains a hopeful intention. I love the word hope. Right? I love it's great, right? You get, let's do that, there's an objective. And then you look around the room and you go, that's just a hope. It's a hopeful intention, because you cannot see the connection between the people, the commitment they're making, and the objectives. So another very important part of this is the mobilization. If you take an example here of JFK, and I just love this example, I'm going to talk a little bit more about it later on as well. JFK went to one of these big events things, and he stood in front of a lot of people, and he stood up and prepared, and he said, in 10 years' time, or by the end of this decade, we're going to put a man on the moon. Right? He didn't say, we're going to, in 10 years' time, we're looking at our objectives, and our objective is to do this, or we're targeting to put a man on the moon, or we're going to have a look at our rockets and add them up, and then we'll come back to you with an idea of whether we can put a man on. He said, in 10 years' time, we're going to put a man on the moon. Now, everybody that was in the audience, right, the media were delighted. the rocket guy that was sitting down there, and the astronaut guy, and the other guy, the guy who figured out how to get the thing to the moon, had a panic attack, right? They didn't know this was going to happen. So a very strong declaration by someone who was in a leadership role, who was granted the trust to do that, made a declaration that changed the game. The moment he did that, this turned not from what is the strategy and what's the grand plan, it turned into a mobilization. How are we going to do it? What do we need to do in order to do it? Not if we can do it or what is it we're trying to do. It moved into, in that moment, it moved into what do we need to do that? And the next day was a very different day for all of the rocket guys than it was for the previous 3 years, where they were all speculating about where they were going to go and how they were going to do it. The trick with this as well, and it's a very, very small little statement at the bottom there about how to embed this. You know, mobilization is about embedding it in action. Action happens ongoing. That's the trick with businesses. Get people taking action, learning from it, trying things. Failure is the thing that teaches us. Right? Failure is a bad word these days. You know, you talked about learning earlier on in the Paddy Power contact center pieces and the lean and all that. That's a super, super approach. And a lot of these statistics kill this thing off. Oh, we have to get our call rates down. We've got to get our abandon rates down and all that. Hey, what about actually we need to spend 4 more minutes on every single call listening to what the customer really wants and what they're really concerned about, and then dealing with that. And eliminate all this failure demand and all this waste. So same thing here. You cannot deliver a strategy without embedding it in the action of every single day and continuously asking about whether they're connected. The most important step, it's number 3, but it's actually number 1 in the process, is don't skip the most important step, right? And 9 strategies out of 10 does this. We go straight into brainstorm mode, get the Post-its out, stick them up on the wall. There's the great ideas. Great, write that up. That's our strategy. Okay? Right, what number are you? Commercial, what number are you committing to? Oh, geez, 20 million, 25 million. Okay, I'll go for 25 million. Great. Record. Move on to the next guy. What's the unit cost? Oh, it's 100 quid an hour. Oh, get it down to 95. Right, grand. That's the strategy. Off you go. The first step is the feedback and listening piece. And that's about reflection. It's about going into your organization and lifting the covers and understanding where you're starting from. Because it doesn't matter where you want to go unless you're grounded in where you're actually starting from. You must be connected to that. And it must be grounded. How many guys have you guys hired? In the last management meeting we were in, 14 opinions been offered about the same problem, but not one piece of evidence or grounding to substantiate it. It's like the broken record, going round and round and round. Kill it. And in strategy work, you must kill what is considered to be the best considered opinion or what, you know, the way the world is. The way to do that is to get people to engage in a process where they go and they lift the lid and ask different questions. Involve people who are normally not involved in these processes. Get them engaged on it. Get the guy to go to his customer in Switzerland. Say, hey, look, there's a ticket. Go to Switzerland. Go to the customer and don't ask him what he'd like to order next week. Ask him, where's he going in the next 5 years? And what do you think our role is in your strategy? And don't be surprised, by the way, if you haven't asked these questions, that they may turn around and say, well, we never really thought you were part of it. You're just a supplier. Ooh, right. That'll give you a sting. Right? So, you know, you need to build this on firm ground. Shine a light on yourselves. Right? If you want to find out about your future, start finding out about your customer's future. That's a key piece. So if we move on, I've got 2 minutes left. What will you get for all of your efforts? The first thing is you get this clarity of purpose. Everybody in the organization becomes really, really clear on where you're going. And that's great. It's so refreshing because you don't get all this waste about, oh, I don't understand, or I'm communicated to, I need to be. You get an engaged team. Look at these guys. They're all lined up. They've got their tools. They're all heading in the right direction. They're all just like the 7 dwarfs going off to work in the morning. Hi-ho. And the other piece is the bit that falls out the back of it is you get improved performance. You get the revenue and the margin fall out the back. I mean, how often, again, how many times have you guys seen, even your strategy, it's leading with the promise around if it is a promise, a target or an objective around the revenue and the margin. The first thing to do is look at these other pieces first, and this will fall out at the back. So, in terms of bringing strategy to life, and this is the piece I want to talk to you about JFK again. Sometime around that visit, and a lot of you may have heard this story before, but you hear it off, but I think it's important to call it out. During his visit to that space center, he noticed a janitor, and he stopped, and he went over to the janitor and he said, "Hello, I'm Jack Kennedy. What are you doing?" It's a very simple question, but there's an awful lot inside this, okay? And the janitor said, "I'm helping put a man on the moon, Mr. President," right? Now, I love this. I absolutely love this, right? For a whole host of reasons about why we just spoke. The first thing is the janitor knew he was Jack Kennedy. But yes, Jack Kennedy introduced himself as an equal, as a peer. "Hi, I'm Jack Kennedy," right? He can go over there with the big swagger, "I'm the this, I'm that, the other thing." So there's an equality there around the connection between two people. The second thing, he's just asked a simple question. He watched him with his broom, right, sweeping the floor. He said, "What are you doing?" Now, why would he ask somebody that? Right? He wanted to engage the person. That's his purpose. And the guy came back with just as much of a simple answer. Simple question got a simple answer. "I'm putting a person on the moon." Right? So don't you wish you had a janitor like this, or a whole load of them in your organization, who were very, very clear about what they were doing, and also so clear about your strategy and what it is you're trying to do, that they could answer a question like that. So I suppose my question to finish up here is, when you go back to your own organizations, or you engage with your customers next about where they're going in their future, what question are you going to ask them, and what answer would you like to get? Okay, because there isn't a better one than this. So thank you very much. No worries.
Okay, thank you very much, Gary.